I am here today at Cornerstone at the Sunset Test Cottage, and I am the Associate Home and Garden Editor, and I'm lucky today to be with Janet Sluis, who is the Director of the Sunset Plant Collection, and we're going to talk about this garden outside of our smart cottage and all these awesome plants from the plant line and how they're designed, how they're put in here, maintenance, all sorts of fun stuff.
Yes.
But first, because we're in front of the smart cottage, which has all of this smart technology in it, Janet wanted to talk a bit about how this garden is also smart.
That's right. We thought it would be very appropriate to keep with the theme and do a smart garden. And we started off with smart irrigation. So here in California and other parts of the country are getting to this too. We now have mandatory shutting off of irrigation every time it rains. Well, the smart irrigation does that for you. It actually links into your local weather, and if it's too hot, it'll actually irrigate a little bit more, and if it rains, it'll shut it off. So you don't have to keep running out to your garden and turning your irrigation on and off. We also find that when people use these smart irrigation planters, you use less water.
Okay.
Because typically people tend to overwater their gardens, but by using these, you can set it at a lower rate and it'll actually adjust accordingly to the weather. And we're using up to a third less water with the same irrigation. It's just the timer.
And are these things expensive? Or?
They're not terribly expensive. And see how expensive water is getting? You can really pay for them very quickly.
Cool. Okay.
So that was the first thing I wanted to talk about. The second thing, this is all on drip irrigation. You don't see any irrigation. You're not going to see any heads popping up. So this whole garden is done on a drip system. And it's also, it's a watershed garden. So Cornerstone's on 12 acres. They actually keep all of their rainwater on site, which is really exciting because we've got drainage here. If you can see over here where I'm standing now, I'm standing on top of a drain. And that's why we did this nice little rock feature. So when the water comes off the roof, instead of going into a gutter or going into the sewer system, it's getting collected here and some other spots on the garden, and that's staying on site, and then that water is recycled and used to irrigate all the 12 acres here at Cornerstone.
Great. And how often do you water in this? Like, how many times per week do you think?
Right now we're watering about twice a week.
Okay.
So this is what we would call a moderate to low water system on this. If I was in Southern California, I would be probably using a few more drought tolerant. I actually don't like to use the word drought tolerant. We like to use more water wise and low water because it means different things in different parts of the country.
Right.
But our goal on this is once the shrubs and some of those other plants get established, that we can go down to once a week.
Wow. And it gets hot here.
It was 112 here over the weekend.
Yeah, 112, so not messing around.
No.
It gets real hot. Speaking of plants, let's talk about some plants.
Let's talk about plants. So we started off, this was not a coincidence. We started off in the shade because it's already getting quite toasty in the sun. So this is our shade garden, and what we do in the plant line is really I'm looking for plants that are very low maintenance, also lower on the water schedule. So we look for plants that will go together in an irrigation scheme. So these are all moderate to low water plants. We've got some camellias. We have some nice nandinas that will stay. This is Nandina lemon lime. So what I love about this is that it never turns red. So some people like a lot of red in the garden, but if you don't like red in the garden, you want something that's going to stay in these nice bright chartreuse category. This is a nandina that will stay really nice and bright. So all the new foliage is going to have that chartreuse. You can use these as cut flower arrangements as backgrounds for cuts. We're looking at things that are multi-purpose. So a lot of the plants we have here, you can either use as an edible, you can use it as an herb, you can use it as a cut flower. So we keep that in mind. We're also really concerned with pollinators. So this garden being a cottage garden, we kind of stuck with the cottage theme. We'll talk about that a little bit more when we go around the corner. So there's probably a little bit more blooming in this garden than in a typical foliage garden that I do. But we kind of wanted to show that there are no blooming plants in this part of the garden.
It looks beautiful. It looks awesome.
And it's very low maintenance. Typically, when I do a maintenance for the plant collection gardens, I look at doing 2 times a year. I'll do a fall cleanup and I'll do a spring refresh. But we're really looking for things that don't need to be, not fussy plants that need a lot of care of attention, and also that don't need to be chemically sprayed. So I garden organically at home. I grow all these plants at my garden, and we grow here. We really are not looking for things that are, need any types of chemical sprays or chemical fertilizers. We try to be really natural with what we use. So these are not things that are not going to need to require chemicals in your garden either.
And this is like this area, you don't need to be coming in here with your clippers very often, doing anything too major. I mean,
No.
today we came in, we cleaned up some leaves that had fallen in, and that was kind of it. I mean, there wasn't a lot to do.
And that's the goal.
Yeah.
Really simple color.
Cool.
Do you have a smart irrigation timer you prefer?
You know what? We'll put a link to something up afterwards.
Great.
Good. Okay. Fun. Is there anything else you want to highlight here? Anything cool like the soft caress or anything at all?
Well, yes, now that you mention it.
Yeah, cool.
So mahonias are native to the West Coast. This is actually a Chinese mahonia, but they're usually really prickly and harsh, and you don't want to get too close to them. This is Mahonia soft caress. So as you can see, I'm not getting stuck with a bunch of thorns, which I would normally be doing if this was a regular mahonia. But it blooms like a mahonia, so hummingbirds love this. We still have some pollinator action going on here. Very, very low water. These can take low water and shade, which is a very difficult thing for planting. So the Mahonia soft caress is a bulletproof plant. We really don't have any problems with it. Very, very low water.
How tall does it get?
It's going to get about 3 or 4 feet tall.
Okay.
And it grows like a nandina, if you're familiar with nandinas. So they get kind of chubby. They'll chub out, they'll get some new underground growth, but they're not going to get super tall and they're not going to get super big. So again, that's the other thing we're looking for, are plants that are a little bit, part of the low maintenance is pruning and how to keep them in size. So these are slower growing plants. They're not going to overwhelm your garden. They're going to stay pretty compact.
And when was this planted?
That's a really good question. So this was planted for the Smart Cottage, which opened in the end of May, and I had about 2 weeks to get this whole garden in before the Smart Cottage opened.
Yep.
And before that, it was just dirt. So this whole thing was just a big dirt patch. And we came in and we did this. We planted it probably a little heavier than what you would plant in your home garden, but we really tried to be mindful of that. One of the techniques we use, which we'll show around the corner too, is using a few annuals as placeholders. So as we get into winter and things cool off, those annuals will die.
Okay.
But then they'll give the shrubs and some of the perennials that we planted time to get bigger. So it's a little trick you can play in your garden. If you're starting off with the new garden, or you have some holes while you wait for your shrubs and grasses and perennials to grow in, you can pop in a couple of annuals that are fast growing and a little bit larger, and they'll take a place of that, some of that empty space for you.
Okay, let's get walking.
Head on down.
Let's check out what's going on over here.
I'm in love with caryxes. We have a lot of different caryxes in the collection. This is Everillo and Everlime and Eversheen. They look like this year round. These are actually extremely cold hardy. They can get down to negative 20 degrees. So this is appropriate for all of our mountain states and some of the colder areas too. In our climate, they will really look like this year round. And if they're in the shade, for us in California, we get sun like nobody else does. A lot of the plant tags will say full sun. They don't play with California sun.
Right.
So our sun is much more intense. It's much more brutal. And so a lot of times you'll see plant labels that will say to put these in the sun.
Yep.
We don't recommend that, and we don't have them on our labels as sun. We always say part shade to shade, because as you can see, these get very little sun and they're very happy.
Bright, vibrant.
Vibrant, and
awesome.
we're always looking for color for the shade. So why not use them in places where we're challenged already?
Great.
This is our Ligustrum Sunshine. I want to talk a little bit about this because it's kind of our chameleon plant. This is a Ligustrum sinensis, which normally blooms and is a noxious weed. So people go, it's a Ligustrum. This never blooms.
Okay.
So you don't have a seeding issue. If you have allergy problems, this is a great plant to use as a shrub or in your garden, because you're not going to have any pollen for people who have allergies.
Right.
A lot of Ligustrums are really almost toxic for people with allergies, but they're used as a basic shrub. So you can prune this like a boxwood. You can keep it really low. You can let it get a little bit taller, but this is the full shade color. We can come across here to
look at this.
This is the same plant in the full sun. And this is 112 degree sun here in Sonoma, full baking sun. So this part of the garden doesn't know what shade is. It starts off sunny in the morning and it ends sunny at night, and it's out here all day long. Again, very low water once these are established.
Okay. And what's this cool blue guy right here? Because people always ask about this.
So we all have a love-hate relationship with festucas. Festucas have a reputation for being low water,
right,
but they actually need more water than we tend to think that they do in order to stay green. And ironically enough, a lot of them will go into a summer dormancy.
Right.
So in that, they kind of look brown and dead and
a little ratty.
Yeah. So this is Festuca Beyond Blue, and you can see even in this extreme heat, it is as blue as can be. It holds this color better than any of the other festucas. It's very, very stable like this. And so we like to use it intermixed in other things. And that's one thing you'll see in this border as we turn the corner. This is not a traditional border. We didn't do all the shrubs as a foundation and then all of your perennials and then all of your annuals. You can throw all those rules away. I get really irritated when I go into a garden center and everything is segregated. We don't think about plants that way. We think about plants individually and how they can be used in a garden. I don't think of them as a category of plants.
Right.
So we mix everything up in here, and what that does is you never have a dead zone. If you have all grass or you have all of one thing, you can have stages where those plants are not in bloom or they don't look good.
Like a lavender field.
Like a lavender field.
Yep.
When you have maintenance, you have to do a ton of it at a time. My idea of maintenance is, pick the time of day you like. If you're a morning person, get your cup of coffee. If you're a cocktail person, get your favorite
I like the cocktail
beverage.
idea. That's fun.
And just go out in your garden. Nature walking is a big deal. I live in downtown Berkeley. As close as I get to nature is my little tiny side yard.
Yep.
But I get so much joy out of that because I can go out there and really give myself a little bit of a nature break.
Okay.
And it's amazing how many birds and butterflies, hummingbirds, pollinators you can get into your garden.
Right.
And it's just a real nice little break. So we'll see that when we go around. There's a lot of things that are mix and matched. This is another new plant. These are coming out of Australia. This is a Dianella. This one is called Clarity Blue. And again, you get this beautiful blue color. This one is in the full sun. Typically, we see a lot of burn on Dianellas in the sun. This one's holding up really, really well in this hot sun condition. It's kind of like a phormium or a flax that's going to be blue. And they'll stay about 2 feet tall like this, and it gives you a nice pop.
They flower in the winter,
They
is that
do
right?
flower, yeah, and they'll get little blue berries on them too.
Cool.
We have this paired here. This is a Lamandra. So Lamandras are also coming out of Australia, New Zealand. They're from climates that are summer dry like we are here. So they can take wet and they can take dry. So it's perfect. They're really tough plants. These are practically indestructible. You can put these in containers. You can mix and match them everywhere. They go with everything because they're such a neutral color. And they're beautiful in the breeze. They get this nice kind of flowing.
They kind of shimmer a little bit too. They're pretty.
Yeah. They do. They're great. They're tough. So I have a fetish for salvia, so you'll see a lot of salvia.
You kind of have a fetish for all of these plants. Let's be honest.
These are my favorite plants. Well, I really do. I spend years researching plants and studying plants and trying plants.
Right.
I kill plants for a living. It's what I do, and I really want to
So this is some
know.
nice honesty. This is an expert who admits that she kills plants. So that's great.
I kill more plants than all of you, all y'all, as they say in the South, put together. And don't feel bad. Plants die for any reason.
Right.
Even I kill plants unintentionally. Sometimes I do it on purpose, but a lot of times, they're tired or they're not feeling well that day. Think of it as an opportunity. Think of it as we all want to buy more shoes. And if you have to buy a new pair of shoes, you have to throw them out.
Okay.
When your plants die, opportunity to buy more plants. So this is Salvia Black and Bloom. It is like a black and blue, only it's bred to be a little bit more compact, a little earlier blooming, but it's still a sage. And what we really love about salvias is, again, we don't really see much pests on these. The deer won't eat them because they have a nice scent to them.
Right.
But the pollinators and the hummingbirds really love any of these flowers that they can get their little beaks into.
Yep.
So often when I'm working in the garden, they're fighting over these plants, and they'll come and be buzzing all around my head and having their little hummingbird fights. Salvias they're long blooming.
Right.
So we have had pretty much everything in this garden has been in bloom now since May. And that's really important when we start talking about perennials, because there's a lot of exciting things happening in the breeding of perennials. So perennials used to be kind of the evil stepchildren of gardening, and everyone was focused on the annual color.
Right.
But now we're getting perennials that have been bred, and this is the old-fashioned way. This is by selection and cross-pollination. There's nothing,
no crazy things
crazy
going on.
GMOs going on here.
Yep.
This is all the old-fashioned breeding work. To get plants that will bloom longer, that will be a little bit shorter, that will require less work in the garden. These are all good things.
And speaking of color, can we talk about this guy covered in bees right behind you?
So another thing that I often talk about, especially in hot gardens, are trees. We're all afraid of trees now because we have smaller gardens and smaller yards or even patios. We don't want a big tree. Lagostromias, crepe myrtles, They can take blazing hot sun. These are growing.
This is full sun over 100 degrees right here.
This is a nice burgundy leaf color.
I love
so it does not, we don't see this fading or turning green or doing anything funky in the sun. So low water, full sun. Once this gets to its full height, which is going to be about 8 to 10 feet,
right,
it'll provide some shade in your garden, shade for you in your garden. You can tuck up a nice little chair there and have your cocktail, kick back, have some fun. But it's still the crepe myrtle colors that we like, and they are very good for birds and bees and pollinators, because there's a lot of, you can see there's bees all through here.
How long do these bloom for?
These have just started to come into bloom now, so they start blooming about in August, but they'll bloom until frost for us here in Northern California. So this is the Delta series. It's the dark leaf. Typically these are green leafed, so this has a lot of that color that we like. I love purple, in case you didn't know that. Lots of purple. But they're really tough plants, and you can put them anywhere in your garden. They'll be great.
All right, let's keep going.
Keep going.
Can we talk a bit about this Chef's Choice?
Yes.
Yeah, I love this guy.
Again, talking about multi-uses in the garden and how to bring edibles and other things into your garden. We don't have to show a show of hands because we're on Facebook, but how many people use rosemary prostrata as a culinary herb, a culinary rosemary? Well, you shouldn't, because it actually has a different flavor profile. It's pretty bitter, it's pretty harsh, and most of the rosemaries that are culinary get huge, like Tuscan Blue. They get to be 7, 8 feet tall. I had a friend of mine plant one, and she cursed me for the rest of her life.
Well, they get really woody too, right?
They get really woody, ugly. You can't keep them soft. So this is Rosemary Chef's Choice. It is an officinalis. It is a culinary rosemary. These will stay nice and low. You can use them as a edging here. They make great container plants. You can put them if you have a raised bed herb garden. This is really the best chef's choice for rosemary. They're very easy to take care of. They're not really going to get much above 2 feet tall, but you're going to be pruning them because you're going to be eating them. They stay nice and soft. I wish we had the scratch and smell.
Oh, right.
Because the oil content on this is higher than on any other. So just walking by here and brushing against it, you'll really get that scent of the rosemary.
It's great. And it's great because it grows like this tall, and then it just kind of curls over a little bit, and that's kind of it.
That's kind of it.
Yeah, which is
amazing. And if it gets a little bit tall, all you need to do is go in here and take your handy dandy pruners and just snip these back. And just kind of do 1 or 2 at a time, so you don't hack them all off at once and make it look kind of unnatural. And then you'll always have some new growth, and you'll always have stuff to either put in your house to make your house smell nice. You can use these on your plates as a little decoration. You can use them in your flower arrangements if you want to have some fragrance, and you can cook with it afterwards.
And I infused some vodka with this.
Check you out.
Real good.
I'm going to be hanging out with you.
Are these pet friendly?
Yes. So far, we have not had any plants that are not pet friendly.
Yeah.
Because we are hearing more and more about that, because dogs like to eat things. Go figure. And dogs are eating plants that we would never have anticipated them eating, and we want to make sure that we take care of your pets.
Yeah. Great. What else we got?
So here's one of those lamandras in its bigger form. You can see it's kind of glowing in that spot there.
Beautiful. And does it get much bigger than this?
It's going to be a little bit bigger than that, maybe totally about 3 feet tall.
Okay.
By 3 feet wide. But again, so this is a grass that doesn't go dormant. It's actually a perennial. So it'll look like this year round. You don't have to worry about cutting it back. You don't have to do anything to it. It'll just sit there and look gorgeous all the time.
So as far as maintenance goes,
it's a zero maintenance plant.
Okay.
If it gets really big and you want to cut it back, I don't say that very often, you can cut around the perimeter just to keep it a little bit tight. But really, I mean, it just looks like that all the time.
Cool. All right. And just so you know, also, our fence is sort of in transition right here. So that's what's going on with our fence. But let's keep moving.
Yes. Butterfly bushes. Buddleias in the past, so there's a hummingbird buzzing our camera crew right now. They're huge normally, 12, 15-foot trees, giant pain in the neck, but hummingbirds love them. So, and butterflies love them. So we were planting these. We didn't even have them out of the pots yet, and we already had butterflies. There's a moth on there right now. But this is Buddleia ultraviolet.
Oh, we got a praying mantis right here, too.
Oh, my
That's
goodness.
Pretty cool.
See, when you're not spraying, you get all kinds of
good bugs
in your garden. But what I really like about the butterfly bushes is they take this immense heat, this hot sun, They're a little fragrant. You're helping your beneficials in the garden. And this one's going to max out at about 3 to 4 feet. So we're not going to have this huge, overwhelming presence. You get all the things we love about a butterfly bush, but in a more compact form. And you can see that in the flower itself, that it's a little bit smaller flower than some.
Did you see that praying mantis almost tried to get that moth?
Really, that's a really cool praying mantis. It's like it's all tucked up. The only downside to some of these is that they do need deadheading.
Okay.
So if you don't deadhead them, they'll keep blooming and they'll keep growing, but they're not as pretty as they are if you can come in a couple times, every 2 or 3 weeks.
Okay.
What is deadheading?
Deadheading, glad you asked.
Ooh, good question.
So deadheading, let's take us, let's see, now we have our monarchs. They're not proving me wrong.
Oh, that's a big one. That's
Big
beautiful.
one. Yeah. And if you plant these, I can't guarantee, there are no guarantees in life, but I can practically guarantee if you plant these, you will have them in your garden because they'll come looking for them. They just love those plants. Every time I'm here, they're here.
Right.
So deadheading is really just cutting off the dead blooms, the old blooms. So you see this is bloomed out here, and we already have some new growth coming. So if you don't cut this, eventually that'll grow up. But I'm a little OCD in the garden, so I like to come in here and just clip that at the next bud. So you can come in and, like I said, we have your drink of choice, and just come in.
Put that drink down for a second.
Put your drink down for a second. You don't want to spill it. That's a waste. And just clip that right there. And you don't have to do them all at once. You can do 1 or 2 at a time. Or
leisurely.
You can wait. You can leisurely.
Yep.
You can even be on the phone. You can have your headset on, be talking to your friends. Podcast.
Yep.
It's very relaxing. I find this type of work, you don't have to think. You can really kind of disengage your brain.
Right.
And just kind of be and enjoy being outside and being in the garden and doing things.
Fun. Okay.
Fun. More salvias because I like, see, they're chasing each other now. It's hummingbirds. This is salvias. This is called Love and Wishes, and it's part of the Wishes series. So there's a couple. Wendy's Wish is part of this. These are, technically they're more annual. So when I'm talking about annuals, if you get a frost, these are going to die.
Right.
If you're in a frost-free zone, they'll be perennial. So perennial and annual really kind of depends on how cold you get and what the plant is. The reason that they're called wishes is that a proceed of the patent on these is going to the Make-A-Wish Foundation.
Oh, that's great.
Which is a really great cause. So we kind of like that about it, and the patent fees go towards that. But this is more of a self-cleaning salvia. So this one's already bloomed out.
What can you tell us about, what does self-cleaning mean?
Self-cleaning means, we were just talking about deadheading. Self-cleaning means that you don't really have to deadhead it, that it looks beautiful without flowers.
Yep.
So this is what the flower looks like, but once they've all fallen off, you still have this to remain. So technically this is called a calyx, and this will stay on the plant, and it doesn't really look ugly. It's a nice look. But again, if you're a little OCD and you want to have things, you can just come in here.
Or you just want to do something in the garden.
Or you just want to do something in the garden, you can just cut that again, just at the next set of leaves. You really want to cut above a set of leaves and as close to it as possible, and that'll encourage that plant just to send up some new breaks right there.
Great.
And we're trialing this plant, but I'm really excited about it. This is a new Veronica hybrid that we're looking at, and typically Veronicas are short blooming, they're disease ridden, they get mildew, they get rust, they get really gross, and they don't bloom very long. Well, this one's been in bloom now
forever.
Since May. It's still popping out flowers in this heat too. We're not, we don't get cold nights here. This is a different thing. So we're going to test it over the winter to see how it comes back, but this is a contender for our plant line for next year.
Great.
Again, ligustrum in the garden. I want to talk about this. So
this is cool.
This is cool. Believe it or not, how many of you can guess what this plant is? I'm going to cut this one too. So this is our lavender. This is a lavender alardi. It's called Merlot. And this is, if you can imagine the rosemary of lavenders, this is it. So as strong as a rosemary smells, this plant smells like lavender. I've carried this through airports and had people hunt me down. They literally chase me down and say, what is that plant? Because they can smell it. It's such a beautiful lavender fragrance. Normally in lavenders, you have to pick the buds out of the bloom, which is a pain. You can just dry the leaves. So you can go out, you can take some cuttings of this. Again, just put them in a bouquet, put them in your house, you'll get that lavender scent. If you want to dry it for a sachet, you can. This is a really good natural moth control. You get tons of moths in the Bay Area that you put this, you can put this in your drawers, you can put this in your bathtub. You can do all kinds of things with this because the fragrance is in the oil in the leaf. So really versatile, very great, lavender merlot.
And it does, we've had it bloom in a second year. It doesn't bloom often.
Here's the mystery with this plant. Yeah. We have about 6 of them planted here. 1 is blooming. And don't ask me why, because this is what this plant does. Some of them bloom, some of them don't. It's not a real heavy bloomer. You can see there's a pretty, you know, a pretty light bloom. So you can get a bloom out of it, but I really talk about the fragrance and the foliage, and that it looks like this year round for us in a little bit of a warmer climate. You don't really need to do much to them. They look like this in the middle of winter here.
Great.
So one last plant that I kind of wanted to touch on, California natives. So we're looking at, this is a ceanothus, which is a California native, California lilac.
And they're usually beasts, right?
Yes. So this one is getting a little beastie, to be honest, but we have a nice variegation on it. Most of them are just green, but this one has a nice variegation, and it's taking, for me, what it's taking is it's the irrigation.
Right.
A lot of times native plants don't like any water in the summer, and they die, but this one is actually doing really well. It's playing well with others. We have this nice bed here that shows all of these different plants together. And if we can get like a long shot, we can see this was the bowling alley garden. We had the house, the hedge, the garden, the fence, the parking lot. It was a very challenging space. So we really wanted to slow people down, put a nice curve into the garden to give it a little bit of, you know, from a design standpoint, it shows off the plants better. You can see them as they meander. There's our butterfly. And you can see we've mixed the shrubs. We've got the butterfly bush repeating, we have the salvias repeating, we have the lamandras repeating, but they're mixed together. So we have perennials, we've got some of the Santa Barbara daisy,
which are great for just sort of softening the edge. Again, all of these are pretty low water plants, and this could replace a lawn very easily. So this was the section that in most gardens you would have a lawn here. We put this in. Lawns are kind of dead zones. You don't get a lot of pollinators, you don't get a lot out of your garden. You can't go out and pick your grass. Well, maybe some grass, but not typical lawns. Right.
Kind of laugh there. But this is a garden that you can get out in, you can enjoy, you can use it as cut flowers, you can cook out of it. And it's just, for me, it's just so joyful.
Fun. It's fun, colorful, easy. Yeah. We
were getting ready for the photo shoot, and we had a woman come in, and she had her wedding here. This is a wedding cottage. They rent this out for weddings. And she said she wanted to come in, and she was taking pictures because she wanted to put this in her garden now because it was her wedding garden. And so, you know, these are things that you can build memories on gardens. I garden, a lot of the plants in my garden are from my mother or my grandmother. You carry those traditions with you and those memories with you, and you can't really replace that.
That's beautiful. I love that.
Beautiful.
Yeah, that's great.
I'm getting all sentimental now.
Yeah, so I mean, really just to highlight, I mean, these are all plants from this one plant line, the Sunset plant line. There's all these like good smelling things, lots of bees and butterflies, and it's colorful. But I mean, I just love that it's really easy, that you can come through, you can take your time, you can have your cocktail, your coffee, and just enjoy this garden.
And that's the goal.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
All right, so we're going to wrap it up, but where can people find the plant line? Where can they follow you or do anything?
They can follow me. I'm Janet Sluis. I have an Instagram and Facebook. Yep. We also have the plant line collection under Sunset Plants, which we do with, you know, for me, I put a lot of weird stuff on there and stuff that's not necessarily, we're still trialing. The plant collection is really more what's already for retail. Yeah. We've partnered locally with different regional growers, so the regional mix is appropriate for whatever region you're in. You can go onto our website. Lots of independent garden centers are carrying this now, so that's kind of where we actually have a retail locator on the website, so you can go and put your zip code in, and it'll tell you what retailers in your area are carrying it.
What is the website, or should they just Google Sunset?
You can just Google it, but it's actually sunsetwesterngarden.com. Okay. Long one, but if you just Google Sunset Plants, that'll work too.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks so much.
Thanks.
It was great to spend some time in the garden with you, and have a great day, everyone. Thanks for watching.
Gardening.